Oh, there you are. I thought we'd go 20 minutes on, 10 off, and 20 on.
I had a different schedule in mind.
Look, mister, these boys got a routine they're used to. You throw a new coach with newfangled ideas at them, might get them all confused. It will ease into it real slow. Hell, our first game's less than 2 weeks away.
Well, first of all, let's be real friendly here, okay? My name is Norm. Secondly, your coaching days are over.
Look, mister, there's two kinds of dumb. A guy that gets naked and runs out in the snow and barks at the moon, and guy who does the same thing in my living room. First one don't matter, the second one you're kind of forced to deal with.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhood Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods, and we are comfortably circling the Midwest on our cinematic US tour. We encourage you to check out our past 13 episodes covering the states in the beginning of the alphabet up through Illinois. On this episode, we're in the crossroads of America. The very first game of baseball was played here. The Jackson family of entertainers were born here, and Elvis's final performance was in this state. And it is also illegal to don a mustache in this state if you ever plan to kiss somebody. That's true. But that's not a problem for anybody in this episode's featured movie. They're all quite clean-shaven. But before we get to that, Dan, have you ever been to Indiana?
I have never been to Indiana, John. Have you?
I have been to Indiana. I have a friend, Jenna, who lives there. Listeners to our Space Camp episode would remember Jenna. She was the one who attended Space Camp and was able to tell us a thing or two about it. So I visited her, and I thought it was great. It's a lovely state. I was in Indianapolis, lovely city, and I don't know. I hope to go back there someday. It's fun. Birthplace of Kurt Vonnegut. Are you a Vonnegut fan?
I am a big Vonnegut fan.
I was going to say, you strike me as a big Vonnegut fan. I don't think we've ever talked about Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, well, we must have, because we covered Back to School. And
okay, that's fair. Yeah. Co-star of Back to School, Kurt Vonnegut.
I can't think of any other movies he's been in, but no, I love Kurt Vonnegut. In fact, as you know, of course, but perhaps our new listeners don't know, I teach English language arts at a high school in the Seattle area, and even though I don't teach I teach Harrison. I used Harrison Bergeron, and occasionally also the Vonnegut story To Be or Not To Be. So I don't teach any Vonnegut books, but I do use, when I start to do like introductions to narrative and like plot structure, I use this video that is Kurt Vonnegut talking about the shapes of stories. And it's very like early to mid 80s, because he references how, well, computers can play chess. So why couldn't you feed the shape of a story? He's basically referencing Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Like 40 years too early, talking about how you could feed a shape of a story into a machine and it would produce like a certain type of story. And I use that to go through it. It's fun because he does the first two, and he talks about it in his very Vonnegut way. Right, and then the third one, he's describing, he's like, well, this one just breaks all the rules. And because normally we don't like to start with characters who are just really low on the like good to ill fortune scale. And he's talking about Cinderella. He builds up to it.
Sure.
And he talks about it in a way where he doesn't need to say it. And when everyone in the audience gets it, he goes, oh, you've heard of it. So it's a lovely introduction. And I just showed that in my class on Thursday of this past week. We're recording this on Sunday, December 3rd. So yeah, I just the other day showed it. And what's even funnier, what's even timelier is that as I was on Thursday evening, I watched Hoosiers.
Okay.
And of course, towards the end of the film, they reference the story of the Hickory basketball team making it to the
Yes.
state championships as a Cinderella story.
It's a
And
Cinderella story.
And one of the things Vonnegut says is, he goes, now this shape of a story is, he goes, it's the most popular in all of history. It's been remade over and over again. And people make $1 million on it all the time. He goes, go ahead, you can try. And then that's what my students do, is I say, okay, where's your $1 million idea? But
Yeah, and who knows, maybe they'll have that $1 million Cinderella story idea.
I got to tell you, I have one kid who kind of just like, he pitched the story to me as they were starting to work it out. And I was like, that's legit. Like, that's good. That's really good. I'm like, that's Oscar contender material right there.
And also we've talked about Cinderella stories before on our Caddyshack episode. So
Well, of course. Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Famous case of Cinderella story being used.
I wonder, and we didn't talk about this back when we did our theme on phrases that originated from films, but the phrase, I know that the phrase Cinderella, but I wonder if using the phrase a Cinderella story to refer to a, against the odds story of success, as is Hoosiers, I wonder if that perhaps originated with Caddyshack.
Well, Dan, if you want to check in with, I'm blanking on his name, Chris
Nashwati.
Nashwati, right?
I
Chris
hope I'm-
Nashwati, who wrote the book on Caddyshack, who you spoke to
Literally.
for this podcast, very literally. Hey, if you want to check in with him and say, hey, just a quick question, would you happen to know, since you're the one who's researched this movie more than anyone else, certainly any of us know. Perhaps he would know. But also, if anybody checks out our our TikTok or Instagram channels, we do talk about these, phrases that come from movies, and I am doing some more of those. We just did one the other day. I'm blanking on what it was even about, but I've been scripting out a few other ones, but talking about, phrases that come from movies. And it's a really cool phenomenon. We covered it when we talked about Gaslight and Hall Pass and the Full Monty, Bucket List. I did one on Core Memories. So Dan, I don't know if you see this at all on social media, but a lot of people like to post about a significant moment in their life that they've caught on camera as being like a core memory unlocked. And that comes from the movie Inside Out, the Pixar film. And it's become this big, social media trend to talk about these core memories. And yeah, it comes from that movie. And, I talk about it a little bit on that video that we posted on social media, but, a lot of them even use the theme from Inside Out, the score from Inside Out, to kind of go under it. So it's a nice little tip of the hat to Inside Out for that, which Inside Out 2 is coming out soon. I'm really excited about it.
I was just going to say, getting a sequel.
Yeah. So I have a few other videos in the pipeline, but if you, for any reason, see that Cinderella story is legit, at least used in that way, coming from Caddyshack, then by all means we should look into that. But I've got a few others in the pipeline that I'm pretty excited about, and one of them I actually thought that there was a phrase that was coined by a movie that we talked about on our last episode, Wayne's World, that actually has more interesting origins. So I go into that a little bit.
Oh, very nice.
Perhaps
Excellent.
by the time this episode is out, it will have been posted. So Dan, I wanted to circle back to, Kurt Vonnegut, a beloved Indianapolis native. And, and I mentioned my friend Jenna Keenly, who was on our Space Camp episode, who lives in Indianapolis, also born and raised Indianapolis. And I wanted to know from and like a true Indianan, what some movies are that are perhaps beloved, Indiana movies to people who are in the state. And, aside from Hoosiers, which we will talk about in a few minutes, she also mentioned Rudy, which, of course, I mean, it's written and directed by the same team that did Hoosiers. So David Onspa, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Onspa. Yeah.
Yeah, and written by Angelo Pizzo. And A Christmas Story is set in Indiana, but it's not filmed there, I believe. But that's one that people are pretty jazzed about. The Fault in Our Stars was written by, the novel was written by John Green. Right. And so that's another Indiana movie. And, John Green is a beloved Indiana native. So as is Hank Green. But she said that the one that people are probably most proud of, which I would have never thought of, is the movie Going All the Way, because it was written by Indianapolis native Dan Wakefield, who I guess is very beloved there.
Okay, Going All the Way, like...
From 1997, with Jeremy Davies and Ben Affleck and Rose McGowan.
Okay.
Yeah. Rachel Weisz. It's... and Amy Locane, our favorite...
Amy Locane,
our favorite... female opposite to Brendan Fraser.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, this movie, I remember hearing about this movie, or perhaps seeing it on the shelves of the West Coast Video when I worked there.
I watched it earlier today because I wanted to be able to talk about it before, for this episode. And it is set in Indianapolis, but I don't know how core that is to the story. I mean, they're talking about kind of being in this geographical area that is, it's close to this place, it's close to that place, it's close to this place, it's in between here, in between there, in between there, but it's not anything itself. And of course, it takes place just after the Korean War, or as soldiers are coming home from their service for the Korean War. I don't know if it states that the Korean War is, over, but, Jeremy Davies and Ben Affleck play these two guys who had gone to high school together. They both come back at the same time to their homes in Indianapolis, or an Indianapolis suburb. And, Ben Affleck plays this guy who was very athletic and popular and charismatic. And, Jeremy Davies plays this guy who was, a photographer and, not very comfortable in his own skin. And it really goes into the dynamics between the two of them, especially because Ben Affleck's character, takes a shine to Jeremy Davies' character, and they form this friendship. And also, with a very small role as one of Ben Affleck's buddies, is Nick Offerman.
Okay, yeah, I was just seeing that on the Wikipedia page for that film.
And what's really funny, I feel like there's a particular Nick Offermanism, even though his character in Going All the Way is like very different from somebody like Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec. But I noticed one Nick Offermanism that he kind of takes along with his characters. I noticed that in Parks and Rec, he likes to, when he's ordering something or when he's asking somebody for something, he'll say, please and thank you. Like, it's like, I'll have a whiskey neat, please and thank you. And he does that in Going All the Way as he's ordering a drink from a bar. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, Going All the Way. I think that it's really just because of Dan Wakefield, who wrote the source material, that it, is so beloved.
Right. Now, is this where you segue to the film about the little team that goes all the way to the state championships?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
I was going to say, if it wasn't, I was going to throw in there just a brief little, I had a chance to watch Rustin recently and highly recommend it to everyone. Rustin, now streaming on Netflix.
Right. Yes.
Biopic about Bayard Rustin, who was if all of a sudden it occurs to you that,
Yes,
I
March
learned
on
about
Washington.
the March on Washington, but never really
Yeah.
learned about how it was organized. Probably because Bayard Rustin, who organized it, was an out of the closet homosexual.
Right,
Who, and even in the civil rights movement, there's a great scene where he even calls this principle into question. Was still looked down on and marginalized, especially within the NAACP, but also like is credited at least by the film to that Rustin was kind of the one who introduced King to passive resistance.
Yeah.
The idea of nonviolence. So, and I know that it was his name Domingo Coleman, I think, or do I have that right? Is the star of the film Coleman Domingo? I had it
Coleman
reversed.
Domingo.
Coleman Domingo is the star of the film, and I think is on a lot of short lists for Best Actor this year, deservedly
great.
so. Supported in the film by also like Jeffrey Wright, CCH Pounder, Chris Rock.
Fantastic.
Fabulous cast. Anyway, wanted to throw out that recommendation because I know there's a flood of Oscar contenders coming out. Don't want it to get lost.
Absolutely. And, that is a straight to Netflix film, as is May December, which just came out. And I happen to catch that one. And that's the new Todd Haynes film. You're pointing at me.
Yeah, I want to, because it's on my list. So
I really liked it.
Yeah.
Natalie Portman is absolutely fantastic. It is about, it says it's loosely based on Mary Kay Letourneau. And I mean, the parallels are pretty strong. Julianne Moore, absolutely incredible. The two of them play off each other so well. Todd Haynes, of course, is just one of the greatest directors. And
Julianne Moore is, like his muse.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, constant collaborators. And so I loved that one. That was pretty great. But and we're speaking about things that are, biopics or something that's like loosely based on a story, and Hoosiers is like inspired by.
Yeah.
It's, it's not like a direct, like, true story. It's just inspired by an Indiana high school basketball team that went to state champions. I don't know if they did things exactly the same way as Hickory.
Probably, I would say probably with a less sturdy arc.
Sure, a less convenient arc. Yeah.
Shall we do it? Yes, but anyway, let's talk about the team that goes all the way.
Norman Dale is the new basketball coach for the high school in the small town of Hickory, Indiana. Dale had coached college basketball over a decade earlier and spent the time in between in the military, but none of that changed the fact that Coach Dale is an outsider. For the town of Hickory, the high school basketball team is the hottest attraction, mostly due to star player Jimmy Chitwood. However, Hickory's status quo-loving citizens fear that Coach Dale's renegade tactics will ruin the team. But after a town meeting votes to dethrone Dale, Jimmy announces that he'll only play if Dale coaches. Meanwhile, fellow high school teacher Mira Fleener feels protective over Jimmy, feeling that basketball is getting in his way of academics, causing her to butt heads with Coach Dale. But through perseverance and a partnership with one of the players' fathers, Dale is able to win the hearts of Hickory's residents and basketball games throughout the state of Indiana. So, I mean, there's so much that's going on in this movie. I mean, even just referring to Dennis Hopper's character as, a player's father is a large understatement. I mean, Academy Award nominated performance by Dennis Hopper.
Right.
Playing somebody who suffers from alcoholism and perhaps many other issues, who, I don't know, Norman, who's played by Gene Hackman, like, he sees something in him. He, aside from just being a huge not just basketball fan, but somebody who's super knowledgeable about the basketball history and
especially the local basketball
history, but also just what he's very perceptive for different things that the team could or should be doing. And so Coach Dale gives him chances that he otherwise wouldn't be getting, and no one else really believes in.
Well, and of
Maybe
course,
for good reason. I don't know.
One of the most prominent themes of the movie is second chances.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right, because Norman is getting a second chance, and Shooter's getting a second chance. Not as Shooter's getting a second chance from his kid, from
Flash.
the town.
What a name!
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And Dennis Hopper, right? Wonderful in this. It's funny because I feel like when you see that Dennis Hopper was nominated for a 1986 performance, and if you're a Blue Velvet fan, you
as
might
I
automatically
am,
assume, that's. But no, he was nominated, even though he was nominated for this performance in Hoosiers.
I have some thoughts about that. I don't feel like he really deserved to be nominated for this role. That I don't know if it's controversial to say.
I mean, he himself has said he should have been nominated for Blue Velvet.
Well, yeah. I mean, and perhaps that was kind of like, the Academy's way of recognizing him, but maybe being a little skittish about recognizing his performance in Blue Velvet, rather giving him the recognition for something more, I guess, with more prowess. As Hoosiers is.
Was Blue Velvet not nominated for Best Picture that year?
I was gonna say I don't remember, but it's like I was 4 during the Academy Awards ceremony.
Right. It was nominated. David Lynch was nominated for Best Director. It was not nominated for Best Picture.
Okay.
So there could have been that.
I've gone on record saying that, and I'm not saying that things are still the same way. There's way different leadership as there was then, but the Academy Awards have historically been weird, and done some really strange things, and
no award could possibly measure something as subjective as like how the quality of one performance over another. And just as there were like probably many good reasons to nominate Dennis Hopper for this role, there's always, I feel like the biggest fan of somebody's work can always find enough reasons to recognize that person's work.
And just kind of staying on the topic of this particular round of Academy Awards, was this the year of like Platoon? Because so Platoon did really well that year. I'm trying to think of what else was like a high performer that year.
1986, so that would have been, I'm trying to think if that was Children of a Lesser God or if that's the year before that.
Well, let's see, 1997 Academy Award winners, not 1987, 97, 87. Let's see. Platoon, Room with a View, Paul Newman for The Color of Money.
Oh, right.
Marley Matlin for Children of a Lesser God. Room with a View, adapted screenplay. Platoon. Oh, Hannah and Her Sisters was a big winner that year too. Michael Caine, Diane Wiest.
Got it. Right. That was the one. Michael Caine couldn't accept the Academy Award because he was shooting Jaws 4.
An amazing true story. I want to see the movie about that.
Don't we all? Didn't we talk about that on our Jaws episode?
Oh, I'm sure we did. So, I felt like Dennis Hopper's performance in this was a little schlocky, and I don't know. It just felt a little like, I don't know, very basic acting. It's kind of like he read a chapter about how to act drunk, and that's what it kind of presented itself like.
Well, yeah. Well, reportedly he learned he borrowed from James Dean and did what he had seen James Dean do.
Okay, well, James Dean was actually very good playing drunk.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought.
but like
Yeah.
he like Dennis Hopper, like there's the story about how Dennis Hopper like spun around for 30 seconds before he did the scene where he comes out onto the basketball, like in the middle of the basketball game drunk, and he said that James Dean did that on Giant. Dennis Hopper and James Dean were friends.
Sure,
So,
Well, Dennis Hopper was in Rebel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Giant.
Oh, he was in Giant too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but no, Hopper's like Hopper's not the and like don't get me wrong. I enjoyed Dennis Hopper. I enjoyed
love
Dennis Hopper. Like, and we've talked about him on Easy Rider, Speed. Yeah, we've done quite a bit of Dennis Hopper already. Dennis Hopper is great at doing at being Dennis Hopper. Apocalypse Now, classic Dennis Hopper.
Absolutely.
And yes, he can act. He's a good actor, but that's to me that's not like I don't think I've ever watched a Dennis Hopper performance except for Blue Velvet, actually. For just to be like, look at how immersed he is in the role. Blue Velvet, yes.
He's fantastic in Blue Velvet.
Oof. But John, Hoosiers in general is like also like the score got nominated. That's synthy.
Was that Alan Silvestri? Jerry Goldsmith.
Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith. It is like the definition of like it's just mid and like that was the one term I could think of.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith. There's some of his scores that I really like. I feel like sometimes he's able to kind of pull it out and do something original and exciting, and this was not one of them. And congratulations on the nom, but I don't know. I felt like it was kind of annoying at times. I feel like the sound design in this movie was a little weird. There's a lot of times when there's like slow motion video and you just hear like grunts and stuff that just don't match what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't want to just shit on Hoosiers.
Oh no. By the way, I enjoy the movie. Like I am a sucker for a good sports movie. And this one, it checks all the boxes for me.
It absolutely does. And, being a mid 80s sports movie, it predates, I think, some of the more famous like schlocky sports pulling at your heartstrings movies.
Right.
One of them also being Rudy. So
yeah, I mean,
it's cousin.
But it comes right in the middle too, because also you have another huge Indiana movie is Breaking Away that has to do with cycling. So you have that in like Rudy, the aforementioned Rudy. So you've got a great history of Indiana set tug at the heartstrings sports movies.
Yeah.
And I think this one is, and I think this one probably is a better, this is probably one, I'm guessing it's one that came together in the editing room. This was a movie that Gene Hackman was notoriously miserable on set. And
it shows.
Yes. And just, I'm like, I mean, it helps. It helps his performance because he wants to be in that town and he grew up not far from there, I think. So, but for him, it was, or no, he didn't grow up there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, he was born in California.
He grew up in California. Never mind. I'm thinking of somebody else. But no, he was like, I love his performance in it, but it's funny because he talks about, when I was reading all this about like, anyone who would listen, he would tell them about, this is going to end up being his last movie and it's going to force everyone into retirement and everything. And I look at the other movies that he was making in the mid to late 80s, and there were a few where I just have to wonder, I hope he was like that on this set too.
So, right.
Was he on Loose Cannons, like writing his Oscar speech?
Yeah. Also, I'm thinking like
not
Superman
for 4. Burning.
Superman 4: The Quest for Peace was 87. Mississippi Burning is 88. Postcards from the Edge is 90.
It's such a
Unforgiven
back
is
and forth.
92. So I think that once we get into the 90s, that's when he really starts to show up a little bit more. Unforgiven, The Firm, Wyatt Earp, The Quick and the Dead. The Quick
Yeah.
and the Dead rules, by the way.
Oh yeah, great film.
Crimson Tide, Get Shorty, The Birdcage, which we just spoke about recently. Extreme Measures, Absolute Power, Enemy of the State, Under Suspicion, and we haven't even gotten to the Royal Tenenbaums yet. Like there's still so much more.
No.
And then of course after Tenenbaums there's Runaway Jury, and to a lesser extent, Welcome to Mooseport.
Yes, yeah, his the last one. But I really liked. I didn't see that one. I liked Runaway Jury a lot.
I wonder if he'll do like a cameo in something, just like a quick show up for a day, sitting in a chair. Charlton Heston in the Planet of the Apes reboot with Tim Burton. Just so that maybe his last film performance won't be Welcome to Mooseport.
It's too bad that his character of Royal Tenenbaum.
Well, that would have been great to go out on.
It's too bad you couldn't really come back to that character, like even in just in a background scene in a Wes Anderson,
Yeah.
Because we could easily debate his greatest role. I don't think it's Coach Norman Dale. Let's just
perhaps The Conversation.
French Connection,
yeah.
Lex Luthor is, I don't know, maybe not his greatest role, but there's a special place in my heart, having grown up especially on Superman.
Oh yeah,
1 and Superman 2.
He's your superhero villain.
Yes, absolutely. He and Jack Nicholson, who wanted to play Coach Norman Dale, apparently.
Yeah.
And couldn't do it because of commitments to another, I think like Witches of Eastwick or something like that. I don't know. Some other movie. But yeah, but Hoosiers is fun. And hey, you know who else pops up in Hoosiers? Chelsea Ross.
Yeah, Chelsea Ross. Chelsea Ross is one of my favorite dirtbags, cinematic dirtbags. He's just like, you see him and you're just like, oh boy, what's this jackass gonna say now? Chelsea Ross. Yeah. He plays he's kind of like the interim basketball coach until Dale gets there. And oh god. You just see his smarmy looking face and you're just like, oh, I just want to punch it.
Right. Every time when they cut to him sitting in the stands.
Until the end.
Well,
in the end, he's cheering and he's happy and he's excited and he's eaten his crow.
Well, no, as soon as Jimmy agrees to play and they start winning, yeah, of course. No, because he's a very fair weather kind of guy. That's Chelsea Ross.
Oh my God.
That's the Chelsea Ross character.
Here are my favorite, I'd say, well, not just 80s, but my favorite on-screen dirtbags. Chelsea Ross is one of them. I will also say John Getz, one of the all-time classic dirtbags. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Men at Work. You just see him, and I don't know, he's done a lot of other roles where he's not just a piece of garbage. I mean, he's very good in things like The Social Network, and he's been showing up, I think, more recently in his career, where you don't necessarily see him for the characters that he played in the 80s.
Well, right, yeah. He's not all because he's not all yuppified with the starched white shirt and the suspenders and the slicked back long
exactly
longish hair. Yeah.
Yeah. He's well past the point in his life as a character that's, having affairs with people, or I don't know, behind some sort of criminal operation. But right. I will say also my third and maybe the biggest cinematic dirtbag, but my third favorite is Dylan Baker. Dylan Baker, do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yes. Dylan
You see-
Baker from
you see-
Congo.
Was he in Congo?
And the only reason why I remember this, John, is because as I was IMDbing Jerry Goldsmith, he scored Congo.
Oh, that's so funny. So
Yeah.
he was in, I mean, Happiness, I think, is one where it's just like, oh,
No,
boy,
that's
this
a
guy-
different. That's hold on. That's Dylan.
Dylan Baker is
Hold
the
on,
one
wait.
who's in Happiness.
Is Dylan Baker's the one who's in Happiness? Okay. Oh, I'm
Yes.
thinking of Dylan Walsh then. Definitely not
yeah,
Dylan McDermott.
Dylan Baker.
Oh yeah.
is-
Apologies.
So Dylan Baker, whose cinematic debut was in Ishtar, and then was in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I think that some of the ones where I feel like he's the most scummy. I mean, Happiness, absolutely. And he
Oh,
was nominated for a few
yeah.
awards for that. Like, absolute scumbag for that. He is, let's see, Along Came a Spider, Road to Perdition, Changing Lanes. You just see him and you're just like, ugh, what a scummy guy.
Although I will say actually, because now that I know who we're talking about,
Yeah.
he was in the film version of the Laramie Project,
Oh, okay.
which I just directed.
Yeah.
The play,
Yeah.
and his character is definitely one of the more sympathetic characters in that story. He's the CEO of the hospital, and he's like he cried when he announced Matthew Shepard's death. So yeah, but Dylan Baker, yeah, I mean, especially if you've seen Happiness, it's hard to not associate him with that role. Oh,
Absolutely.
The Americans. He was on The Americans. He played.
He's on The
a
Americans.
spy.
He a movie that I just saw the other day, Dream Scenario, which is so fascinating. He's kind of just like a smarmy douchebag in that one.
Yeah.
And then he also on television, he was recently in Hunters. Was that on Showtime? The Al Pacino.
Prime.
Was that Prime? It was one of the
was
streamers.
Prime.
Yeah. And yeah, so it he plays
I think he's a Nazi in that. Yeah.
He's a Nazi. I was going to say an unsavory character, but yeah, he's a Nazi.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's one of my also like favorite on-screen dirtbags. But
Well, we can't leave out William Atherton and William Zabka if we're talking about 80s.
Right.
Or do they fit under
absolutely.
a different category?
I mean, definitely. Well, okay. William Atherton, who we all know and love from Ghostbusters and Die Hard. He's scummy. He's a kind of scummy dirtbag, that's for sure. I don't know if William Zabka is a dirtbag, but he is definitely a douchebag.
Okay. Yeah. That's
yeah,
where
I think that there's like a fine line. He's a smarmy
Is
asshole.
it just age? Do douchebags age into dirtbags? Is it just that like the Zabka characters in the 80s are young?
Well, there's an arrogance to the dirtbags too. Like John Getz definitely was a
But that's what I'm saying.
Zabka type.
Does a Zabka age into a Getz?
I don't know the Zabka.
This might not be
Getz
a question
pipeline.
we can answer.
No, but if you have thoughts, email us ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. But I want to talk about Barbara Hershey for a second.
We have spent far too long not talking about Barbara Hershey on this episode.
She plays Myrna Fleener, a ridiculous name, but totally works in the context of this movie. I don't know how I feel about Barbara Hershey in general. I didn't necessarily love this character. It's like I felt like there was no chemistry between Barbara Hershey and Gene Hackman.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly out of nowhere, they go from like, butting heads to smushing faces.
Yeah, it's very by the numbers and very much like this is happening because it's supposed to happen in this type of movie.
Yeah, it's like they don't have chemistry, but then I think to myself, who would Gene Hackman have chemistry with? And
Roy Scheider.
Roy Scheider. We definitely see it with Diane Wiest in The Birdcage to a certain extent. Angelica Houston in The Royal Tenenbaums to a certain extent.
But
there's
that's the thing,
strained relationships.
Gene Hackman doesn't have new relationship chemistry with people. They've been married for 40 years. And like, it's exactly that Royal Tenenbaums and Birdcage. Like, they've been married forever and they like cohabitate in the case of the Birdcage. In the case of the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know who he does have on-screen chemistry with? Ned Beatty.
Yes. Yes. Were they in anything together other than the Superman films?
Superman films. That's all you need.
Yeah. No, that's right. He had great chemistry with Ned Beatty.
Yeah, but not romantic chemistry. As he's supposed to have with Barbara Hershey.
But he does have that like long time marriage chemistry. He manages that.
I think that the difference is him starting a relationship. It's hard to capture that. Him ending a relationship or, being in a relationship that has maybe run its course, that's for sure kind of his zone.
Yeah, he seems the type to play characters who would have at least one ex-wife.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
He definitely owes alimony.
Yeah. Yes, he definitely does. So anyway, I don't know. Barbara Hershey's character, I wish that she, I don't know. I wish there was something else to her. She seems to, she has a very special interest in Jimmy as a student with promise who could potentially get out of Hickory and make something of his life, but on an academic basis, and isn't thinking in terms of basketball scholarships the way that Norman is kind of thinking.
Well, she's also bitter about basketball because she it sounded like there was a bit of jealousy for her brother who is a big basketball player. And what happened to him? I am forgetting. And
she just has basketball related trauma. That's what
there's
I remember.
Nothing real. There's nothing. I remember that there were a lot of implications, but like they never went into anything such as why she didn't, because Hackman asks her why she never got married. And
that part made me feel uncomfortable.
Well, yes, uncomfortable, but also like framing it in the 1950s.
Yeah. Right. This movie takes place in like 51, 52.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely a lot more understandable that someone would ask a woman of her character's age, and I don't know how old her character is supposed to be in this, maybe 30.
Right. Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's a little less out of place or out of pocket to make that comment. But also it's like, that was something that I felt like I got to the end of the movie. I was like, wait a second, did we never? Because it seemed like there was something going on there, and that was maybe one of the only things that it felt like. Okay, well, something could have given her character some depth here, even if it was just like that she wasn't getting married specifically to make the point that she does not need to get married to be happy.
You know what I would have liked from her character, and we meet her mom, Opal, who is a very fun character.
She's a pistol.
She's a pistol, exactly. And it would have been nice to see a conversation just between the two of them. You kind of see them around each other, but never talking to each other. They live together, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they almost have a Sophia Dorothy relationship, just
except for Sophia and Dorothy talk to each other.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're the Midwestern Sophia and Dorothy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not actually going to confront anything.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wish that there was more to the Myra Fleener character. And it almost just seems like once the basketball, once we like kind of get through that and it's like their tension and then they kiss and whatever, And then he's like, I've been wanting to do that since the moment I met you. And it's like, really? Because she was like mean to you in a hallway of a school.
Yeah.
Like you were thinking about making out with her then?
In the middle
Weirdo.
of passing period?
Yeah, I
Really?
know. It's like, come on, dude, get with it. And I don't know. So, but it seems like once their relationship kind of resolves, there's still like 45 minutes of just basketball games to go.
Oh yeah. And it's great. And Shooter and his kind of his path
It's like-
to sobriety and his son. Now, and there were a few, John, there were a few other things that I felt were missing. And I was just kind of curious, like, did you pick up on this, that, or the other thing? So there was that other dad, like Mr. Butcher, and he's the one who, like, his kid went at the first practice when like one of the kids walks
Yes.
out and then like
Yeah.
the other kid goes with him, and this guy, like Mr. Butcher, brings the kid back and is like, makes him like does the right thing.
He's the first one that stands up for Coach Dale.
And it felt like, it's like, all right, so why is this one guy who seems like he's one of the townsmen,
Right.
he's just like one of those guys, why is it that this guy is cool and
I don't know.
and the rest of them, and even when this guy's like, all right, coach doesn't want you in here, you best be gone,
Yeah.
and they're still not like, all right, well, if Butcher's going to be cool with him.
It was confusing. It's like, okay, then how does this guy fit into things? How come we don't see him involved more throughout this?
But he's always there though. He's like the
Yeah.
other assistant coach all of a sudden,
yeah,
coming in all the.
okay.
There was okay.
Hoosiers is, as you said, it's one of those like feel-good sports movies, but I just don't think it's very good. I don't think that as a movie, it is just very well constructed. There are things that don't make sense. There are things that are missing. And the one time where I was like, oh, was when right before the final game, they're all huddled up and he goes, I love you guys. And then they
Yeah.
ruined it by
Yes.
that shot at the end where it's like you're inside of the high school gym and there's like a little kid shooting baskets and it's kind of like pushing in on the team photo, and you just hear some like clips from the audio clips from the movie, and one of them is the I love you guys. And it's like, oh, you ruined that perfect moment by like by being like, remember when he said this? I don't know. That
Yeah.
annoyed me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they didn't have to do that.
But I'll tell you what, I felt it when he first said it to those guys. I really felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I did like how he spoke to those guys. Once they got into their groove, he spoke to them with a lot of respect. I mean, like the team, the kids on the team. Like he really, once they kind of fell in line with what he was doing, they really started to, gel all like as a whole unit. I felt like Dale was, I don't know. I couldn't see how he was actually a good coach. He was hard on them and he was doing things in a very militaristic way, but I don't understand why they started to do better because of him, because I didn't see, yes, they played more cohesively as a team just because he kind of made them do that, but it's like, what did he really do?
Well, you just said it. He made them play more cohesively
Yeah,
as a team. But
right.
but like the whole 4 passes before shooting. So like this is that's something where I can actually point to something in the movie and say, okay, this is I can understand and look, neither one of us is a basketball player.
Yeah.
So with a grain of salt, but that's at least one thing that I can look at it and say, okay, he forced them to not like try to shoot and not always go for the basket, and he instilled that rule of that 4 passes, which is probably nothing scientific, but it's enough to say, okay, now I'm used to passing the ball around and working with my teammates as a team. as like one unit that takes up the whole court versus like 7 individuals.
Yes, I understand that. But what I am missing from his coaching and from this movie is a connection to him as a person, him as somebody who has had these past experiences, and why the coaching that he does makes sense for him. Because we get the idea that he has a checkered past, which I never felt like that was made very clear.
We have no idea.
We are told he has a
punched
checkered
a player.
past.
He punched one of his players. We have no idea why.
Yeah,
we have.
I would not call that a
no
checkered
idea why.
past. I wouldn't call it a checkered past. I'd say, he stepped over the line once, and it's kind of like damaged, the public perception of him. But that was a long time ago. And,
but again, something else that they don't explain, that they have opportunities and could explain that and give the character some depth and illuminate us. But all we're told is he punched one of his players.
Yeah. Right. I wish that we would have had more of an opportunity to understand from his past experience why he's instilling them with these, coming together as a team instructions. It's just like, oh, this is a tactic, but why does it need to come from him? What makes him so special? Why do we need to be on his side? Because he is the main character of this movie. And aside from just being told, this is the main character, he is the person you're seeing come to this town where people don't really care for him so much upon arrival. It's like we're not given any concrete reason to be on his side. And honestly, I wasn't really on his side. I don't know. I really felt like, couldn't they have found literally anybody else and that maybe had some experience to help this team get better? Why him? Because he's old buddies with the one dude who works there? I don't know.
Isn't he the principal?
The principal? Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. This was your first time seeing it, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Was it yours?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it was like my second time seeing it, so it's not like I've seen it a ton of times. It's not
watched
my favorite
it
movie in the world, but
I watched it twice because I was so bored the first time watching it, and I was like, after that, I was like, did I just miss a whole bunch? Was there just things happening that I just didn't pick up on because I was like tuning out? And then I watched it again, and I was like, nope, it's all there. It's just not exciting. And I feel bad saying that because, like, I know that for a lot of people, this is a beloved sports classic. And there's just something about the action of it that feels very sleepy to me. I don't I mean, Jimmy is a nice guy, I guess. He seems fine. The short guy is pretty cool. But I don't know. I feel like we don't really get to know anybody really.
I think the ones who we get to know the best are Strap, like the son of the minister.
Yes.
Who paints because we know about painting the bus and that he is praying really prays before every game and thinks everything is, and he's got that there's just that innocence of, because God told him to paint it. God told him to drive the bus. Yep.
Yeah. And also when Dale says God wants you to be on the court, and he's like praying a little too long and he looks at him and he's just like, all right, here we go. Yeah. I don't know. He's kind of, he's okay. I don't know. I still feel like there's so much missing.
He's got something that makes him stand out. Like he's just like the eternal optimist. And same thing with Shooter's kid. I forget his name. I don't know if we're ever told his name.
Let's see if I can find it on this thing. Yeah, I don't know. He also looked, Everett, played by David Niedorf. And another problem that I had with the exception of the one who's shorter, and I feel like Everett Flatch, I could not tell the difference between a lot of these players because they all looked so much alike. I felt like Everett looked a little different, just like he wasn't as kind of like sharp looking, I guess. So I don't know, he was a little bit more noticeable, but everybody else, including Jimmy, all just looked alike to me. And I get that, like, you know, in the early 50s, you had the one hairstyle and that was it. And
I guess Indiana
everybody
Farm
there's
Boys.
Indiana Farm Boys. They come in the same color patterns, which is white on white, and
they do.
yeah, dark hair, white skin, and yeah, they all just kind of blended together for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I feel like because this is a movie that like has you know, the framework is all there. It's got good bones.
And I
So,
guess I'm trying to think, like, how many basketball movies are there really out there? I mean, okay, all right. So White Men Can't Jump,
semi-pro
basketball, semi-pro
Loving Basketball.
How many basketball movies predate Hoosiers, though?
Oh, that is a good question.
I think you started seeing a lot more basketball movies in the 90s, like Blue Chips.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sixth Man.
Yeah. You're right. Above the Rim. The Air Up There. Kevin Bacon.
The Air Up There, right. Juwanna Man.
Juwanna Man. Yeah.
Like Mike.
Like Mike, for sure. Celtic Pride, if you want to count that one.
I don't know how much basketball there is in that movie, and I'll never find out.
Finding Forrester.
Oh, that's a basketball. That's kind of a basketball movie.
Oh, you know what? Teen Wolf.
You're the man now, dog. Oh yeah, Teen Wolf.
Teen Wolf is
Predates Hoosiers.
Teen Wolf is the original basketball movie. and then of course later on we get Basketball, which I suppose is a cousin.
It's its own special thing.
Yeah,
is Basketball. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, Teen Wolf is about a teen who's a werewolf. It's less about basketball. But I guess, you know, Hoosiers is about a guy with a checkered past.
Do we consider Teen Wolf 2 a boxing movie?
Yeah, sure.
I feel like there might be more basketball in Teen Wolf than there is boxing in Teen Wolf 2, but I'm also not going to be able to tell you that for sure.
Yeah. The basketball scenes in Teen Wolf are pretty memorable. I'd say maybe more memorable than the basketball scenes in Hoosiers. Not to say they're not memorable, because there are some things that happen that I'm sure for basketball fans stand out.
Well, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe if Mark Holton was playing one of the Hoosiers team members, would have stood out more. Mark Holton.
Maybe.
Look him up if you don't know who I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yes, it's exactly who I'm thinking of. It's Francis from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Francis from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Whatever his
absolutely.
character's name is in Teen Wolf.
Or the guy who says, it's Enrico Palazzo in The Naked Gun.
That's true. Yeah. Everybody's favorite baseball movie, of course.
Of course, yeah. It's a baseball movie. Right. It's got Reggie Jackson in it.
Yeah, I mean, athletes all over the place. You even have that star athlete O.J. Simpson, who's done nothing else aside from being a football player and actor.
Absolutely, yes, that is what he is known for. So
anyway, Dan,
Hoosiers.
What would you do with Hoosiers these days?
I'd call my man Jason Katims or
okay.
I apologize for not knowing how you pronounce his name. But the master of turning especially
You'd Friday Night Lights
films, but you know what? Like, yes, it's set in the 50s. I definitely would love, keep that 50s setting, and just like, yeah, like basketball in a small farm town in the 1950s, and how much does that town live and die by the fortunes of the high school basketball team.
Yeah.
And I think that is the showrunner who I feel like this is his wheelhouse. And I don't think this needs. I don't think a Hoosier. I think a Hoosiers TV series would be lovely. Of course, there's so many series on so many different streaming services, and
Right.
I could easily see this popping up on Peacock and going for a season and then vanishing as so many more have before it. So it feels like a little less meaningful than, let's say, even when Friday Night Lights was adapted into a series, because now it just feels like there's room for everyone, which I don't know, makes them all less special. I feel like a Hoosiers TV series 20 years ago would have been, news, and
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're
there
saying.
could be one on. All right, I'm not saying I would watch it per se, but I also think okay, well, this would be a fine series that people would watch, and people like basketball, and it could work fine. I don't know what else you do. Hoosiers the musical just isn't quite singing to me, so to
Well,
speak.
so Dan, I am just doing a quick search about Hoosiers remake. First of all, there was a short in 2005 called Hoosiers 2 Senior Year, and it's the son of Normandale, played by the late Matthew Perry.
Pour one out.
Pour one out. Also, I'm seeing a couple years ago, Angelo Pizzo, who wrote the film, is talking about a new version, which I think means adding in deleted scenes. So I guess there's a version with added and deleted scenes that he thinks is better than the original. So
Well, that would make sense.
so I
Especially if they
wouldn't.
were the added scenes we've been talking about.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't mind seeing that. I also see an article that's saying that David Harbour of Stranger Things, and I like him a lot. I don't know what your thoughts are on David Harbour, but he wants to remake
Yeah.
Hoosiers.
Yes,
So
I like
yeah.
it. He wants to be Coach Dale. I could see
Yeah.
that.
So he is in this movie. Do you know anything about the Gran Turismo movie, Dan?
I know that I don't know much about it. I just know that it is based on some form of reality.
Yeah. So the Gran Turismo movie is based on, so there's the video game Gran Turismo, and there was some sort of competition where the winner of this, because it's a racing game, the winner then gets to actually race a car in an official race, something like that. And so it's pretty out there. So I guess he was saying that he drew his inspiration from Gene Hackman's performance in Hoosiers. And let's see. What he says is Gran Turismo is a very, very moving in the way that those sports wish fulfillment underdog stories are. And I've always loved Hoosiers ever since I was a kid. And I have been. I would love to make my version of that, Gene Hackman's Hoosiers. So I guess it's more saying that he just draws his inspiration from Normandale.
And that if someone called him with an offer to play Normandale or a Normandale like character, he would listen.
I suppose that would be, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, I think that he's great. He's very charismatic. I'm looking at this thing from 2010 called The Hoosiers Remake Falls Short. Where was Jimmy Chitwood when we needed him? And David did not smite Goliath, but they gave him a hell of a scare. The rest of us a great game. Let's see. I guess I think that this is talking about a particular NCAA men's basketball game that people were calling Hoosiers 2 the remake. I'm assuming it is a smaller school that came from nowhere. So I will also mention, Dan, we have talked before on this podcast about the fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame. And I think it was 2021, Jimmy Chitwood was inducted. Let me see if
Deservedly
Hoosiers,
so.
Yeah. And then the contributor for that year was Norman Dale. I guess, because they have 3 different sections: athletes, contributors, and veterans. So,
Right.
So there we have that. Yeah, I think that for me, I wouldn't mind seeing a remake and just kind of giving the elements that kind of got things muddied a little bit, maybe giving those a little bit of a boost. And I think that maybe removing the character of Shooter might make it a little bit cleaner and provide a better pathway, and really make the Gene Hackman character, the person with the flaws that we want to give a second chance to. Because here it's like, oh yeah, I deserve a second chance, but who needs a second chance even more is this guy. And
Right.
I'd rather just keep it, straightforward, keep it tidy, and make it just the Norman Dale character.
Yeah. That certainly makes sense. And also, if you take some of those aspects of Shooter and transfer them over to the Norman Dale character, that could also help provide some more answers and flesh out that character.
I mean, maybe he is overcoming an addiction problem.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or just, even just like anger issues, especially if you're setting this in the 1950s, it's not like we've got, it's not like, oh, well, your insurance should pay for therapy for you.
Yeah. I think that my biggest issue with the movie, though, is that Norman Dale, he didn't communicate with anybody. He wasn't clear with anybody. People would say their feelings to him and he just wouldn't respond. And it's like, all you have to say is X, Y, and Z, and maybe things can get a little bit better. And if he, like, let's say the league of older hickory gentlemen who want him like thrown out upon first sight, if he says to them like, okay, I understand that this means a lot to you guys, and all I'm asking is that you give this a chance. It's going to seem a little different, but I have an idea for a better pathway that could take and if it works, it can take these guys to state. If it doesn't work, I will leave town, my head in my hands, weeping. and that's it. We didn't get he didn't communicate with anybody. And, it's 1951 and he's a closed off guy with a checkered past, as they say.
Yeah. Just being if you're a man in 1951, you were not expected to, share your feelings.
But it's
your
not even
thoughts.
feelings. It's not even feelings.
No.
It's just like an understanding of just like I see where you're coming from. Like I understand why you're upset. I would be too.
Well, or if the character's not going to behave that way, let us know why. At some point, let us know why. You don't have to feed it to us right away in the beginning. That's fine. Let's foreshadow, drop some hints, but give it to us at some point. Let us know, okay, why is this guy not maybe putting his best foot forward as he's coming into this new place and he's the outsider and it's kind of
exactly.
Up to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, Dan, there's something that I want you to let me know, and I guess our listeners. What are we covering for our Iowa episode of the podcast?
I owe answer to that question. And that... So we're going to be covering this is kind of an obscure one, which is surprising considering the names who are attached to this movie, but it's from 1971. It's called Cold Turkey. It's written and directed by Norman Lear of All in the Family and the Jeffersons and One Day at a Time. Just comedy legend. Yeah. Starring Dick Van Dyke.
Two legends.
DVD himself. And Bob Newhart is
another
in it as
TV legend.
And Gene Stapleton.
Another
Edith
TV
Bunker.
legend. Yes.
Yes. So
I don't think I've ever
seen.
seen Gene Stapleton in something other than All in the Family.
So interestingly enough, the only other movie I can remember seeing her in is another movie that is set in Iowa.
Really?
Michael from 1990.
That was set in Iowa?
96 or 97, where John Travolta's an archangel.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty, yeah, because I think when I was researching movies that take place in Iowa, that one came up and I just thought about it briefly and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jean Stapleton is in that, and she's in this movie Cold Turkey from 1971.
I'm stoked to check it out. I believe it's on Prime, if I'm not mistaken.
It is currently streaming on Prime.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can watch that and Hunters all in the same app, as we've established.
What a wonderful world we live in.
Well, Dan, as you are traveling on the church bus to your next big game, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.